Want to go ahead and record?
Perfect. Okay, Alfred, Alfred Record with Lifetax Financial. Thanks for joining us. You can hear us still, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Everything
awesome.
sounds good. No problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, tax is such an interesting topic. Everybody has to do it, right? The old two things in life, right? Death and taxes. So, you are, I'm sure, in high demand, and you're about to be kind of your busy season, right? So, can you tell us just about what you got, your business and just a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So, I am actually, I got in the tax industry roughly 14 years ago. Just it wasn't necessarily by my plan. Just kind of stumbled into it and fell into it and just kind of fell in love with it, in the industry overall. Started out just doing personal taxes. I was at the time teaching seventh grade math and started doing taxes from an invite from a friend of mine that I went to college with who was already doing it. So he invited me to join his team and just do it on the side, just have to make some extra money, little, side hustle, if you will. And so I just started out with teachers' taxes and doing my coworkers' taxes after school. And then so that where I first initially kind of found the love of doing it after about 2 or 3 seasons. And then the money just kind of kept rolling. The clients kept, base kept getting larger. And so I just evolved into beyond just teachers and just doing everyone who needed their taxes done on a personal standpoint. And then I started to take it way more seriously in my fourth year and started doing business taxes. And so it's evolved since then. That fourth year is when I started my own team, my own company, and I launched Life Tax Financial Services based out of Dallas, Texas. In 2020, I received my enrolled agent license, which basically is similar to a CPA, except all enrolled agents are involved with taxes and taxation, and it's a designation given by the IRS versus CPAs are designated by their particular states where they practice on a state level. And so once I got that, it just really opened up the door for me to do a lot more as far as being able to represent clients before the IRS, and then also more business clients, including S corps, C corps, nonprofits. So we do all of those now, and I just developed a team over the last 10 years. We celebrating 10 years in business next year for Life Tax Financial, and we service clients all over the country. The bulk of them are in Texas, but we have a little over 600 clients throughout the country. So that's a bit about how I got started and where we are now. We do have about four bookkeepers on our team, myself, and then also a CPA as well.
Yep.
Congrats
So
on 10 years.
yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, but it's, glad to be here. Great milestone. And just glad to have a good team around me because there's only so much I can do, obviously, as one man, and I didn't want to be a one guy show. So we'll just continue to try to grow the team so we can continue to service clients and not have to turn people away.
Yeah. And so obviously you're self-employed, you've done all sorts of different kinds of things, but being that you are the guy, it's your business, you've been doing it for so long, that's got to be a way to really help your experience for clients that you bring on as well, right? I mean, you're going through the same things that the people you're bringing on go through. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that and like how that might help you deal with someone like me who is self-employed and maybe have a couple different things going on, someone like Greg who's maybe on the 1099 side, and then, just kind of how that works. Can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, a lot of our clients kind of organically come from referrals that from people who own their own businesses and are kind of just getting started, and so that kind of became a bit of my niche. Are startups and businesses that have only been going for maybe 5 years or so, or less, over 10 or less. We do have clients that have been in business for a long time, but it just kind of organically we've just got more of those kind of clients because that was my story, taking my side from going from a side hustle to a full-time business, being a full-time entrepreneur. I can relate to everything that they're going through, from trying to open up the right bank accounts, which bank is right, for small businesses, to, what can I really legally write off, and, those kind of things. And, there's that side as a new entrepreneur where you're just trying to make ends meet. You're hustling, you're grinding, you're just trying to get that next client or the next customer so you can make the monthly expenses, right? Not much tax implications there. It's more about planning, and it's more about keeping the business sustained and the revenues coming in. So I know that side, and I can help to speak to that side, taking advantage of credits, and, or maybe even lines of credit and grants, from our bank partners and things like that. So that's that side. But then you get over, hopefully every business owner's goal is to get over that hump. And then you get to the point where you really start making money, and then you might meet that first big goal of making, doing $100,000 a year and get to the six figures in revenues. And so then you have to start being more strategic about, okay, well, now I've got to start dealing with taxes because now this, I'm making money, but I don't want to have to give away 30% of it to Uncle Sam if I don't have to. So then you got to start looking at, okay, what can we start doing now to start spending money the right way, start making more of my personal life, and intertwining it, and forging it with my business life. So more things are now write off, for me as a business owner, and then other strategies that I might need to take and plan. So we deal with both sides of that as for newer entrepreneurs, and I've been there. So that's why I feel like that kind of works to our advantage, because we can speak to that and we've had that experience.
For sure, Greg.
That's awesome. I mean, that's one of the things that me and Mark talked about, obviously, before he found you was how does Mark specifically, I'm not to that point yet, but how does Mark find somebody that has the experience and knows kind of the ins and outs prior to him trying to dive into it, trying to set up his financials, with taxes, his S corp, LLCs, bank accounts, things like that. I deal with a lot of clients who are small business owners as well, and hearing the struggles and just hearing what they don't know is always super interesting. If they sell kettle corn out of a trailer at farmers markets, and they make not a ton of money, but they make enough money to where maybe they probably shouldn't be mixing bank accounts. Maybe they should start a business entity, things like that. So I think it's great that you have that experience and kind of use that, like you said, to build your target audience and be able to help people the right way.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. So Alfred, I asked a bunch of my kind of clients and realtor partners, hey, we're going to have somebody on that knows about taxes. What things are on your mind? And we've got a couple of those types of questions. You hit on some of them when you were talking. But just with that, like, obviously I'm thankful for you. You work with me, you help me out a lot. And that's something for people to really know that are business owners, and then also people who are looking to purchase real estate. I've talked to you about this a lot. Like, hey, I need my taxes in a certain way so that my income and debt to income and everything can work out and I can qualify for a mortgage. And so there's just so much people maybe don't consider when they just go to the tax office in the strip center for as cheap as they could possibly do. Like, what's your plan? Are you in business for the long run? Are you doing your personal taxes as a W-2 employee to help yourself try to do something down the road? Like, can you just kind of talk about just general prep? Like, obviously, you've helped me a ton just get to a base level now where these things are not in my head anymore. My head is now freed up to do my job and try to run my business instead of worrying about all these kind of IRS and admin things that maybe used to really bog me down for a month or more at a time in a year. So, can you kind of talk about the prep? And then one of the questions is kind of what kind of mistakes do you see people doing out there? Maybe a top mistake or two, and then maybe like what do you see most people, even if they really don't know what they do, luck into doing something right?
Yeah, so I'm glad that they mentioned the mistakes question. I actually have a whole presentation about some of the top mistakes that new entrepreneurs make. But one of the things that I can say is for sure, and this ties into your prep question, is that most newer entrepreneurs don't take the time to do their numbers. They don't, and I feel like, Mark, this is something that you actually did well at, in my opinion. But most don't, So one of my points that I always bring up when I go teach, because that's one of the things that I do is go out and I teach seminars for different organizations on business taxation. But I let these new entrepreneurs know, hey, I challenge them to spend 1 hour a month on their numbers. I say, make a standing appointment with yourself, have your meeting, go over your numbers, reconcile your accounts, categorize your transactions. If you have QuickBooks, go on to QuickBooks and categorize those transactions. Or if you don't have QuickBooks, or FreshBooks or Zero or whatever, go into your Excel sheet. If you're old school, go find you, get your paper and pencil and figure out what you spent, what it was for, and what category it'll fall in. So that's one of the mistakes that I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs are not doing. They're not disciplined to take 1 hour per month and do their numbers just so they know where they stand, what they're spending money on, if they're spending too much money on certain things. I believe Expensify or is it Rocket? One of those apps, I believe it's Expensify, that has this whole thing where it'll show you all of the subscriptions that you have associated with your bank account. And it'll be like, you may not even know that money's coming out, or you may have forgotten. And so, you can say, well, do I really need this subscription anymore to Redbox that I don't even go to Redbox anymore and watch these movies, just anything, like you're spending, $12 a month and that's just one thing. And then you do that times about 4 or 5, and then there you go.
Yeah.
You can put that money
Please tell
away.
me you don't still have a Blockbuster card.
Yeah.
Right, right. They're still charging your account from 1992. But, if you just kind of start to add those things up and then say, okay, man, just from that alone, because I went and took the time to look at my books or look at my numbers, I'm saving 150 bucks a month just from doing that. Now I can go afford to get that Microsoft Office subscription, and so I can actually use Word or Excel or whatever, or I can take that money and go get that insurance policy that my financial advisor suggested that I get, so I can start putting money away towards retirement or opening up a Roth account for my kids, so they are set for college savings or whatever the case is. So that's one of the biggest mistakes, and that's one of the things I would say in prep. And, that's how you prepare yourself. Like, let me sit down and do the numbers, and then once you get to that point to where you're so busy with your business and you're making good money, then you can say, okay, now might be the point to where I can actually afford to hire a bookkeeper to handle this for me and take that pressure off of me. So now all I have to do is review what they've already done, right? And then I see the numbers, I see the money that's being spent. I can start to decrease money being spent here or increase money on that part. So, because that's giving me a return on my investment, like advertising or marketing or whatever the case may be, Facebook ads, Instagram, whatever. And I can hire somebody to do that for me. But you have to start it yourself and know it yourself, and then outsource it to someone else once the business is making that enough money to do that.
Yeah. I know we have limited time, so I'll go over one thing. Greg, do you have anything?
I mean, I wanted to touch on just him, Alfred, you mentioning, just know your numbers. As I'm 1099 worker, so all my expenses are coming out of my pocket. I'm not running ads. I'm not doing a ton of marketing in the traditional sense, but client meetings, partner meetings, dinners, things like that, mileage, subscriptions, things like that. I have QuickBooks, and I do catch myself sometimes where I go into it and I'm like, oh, I haven't logged my miles for 6 months, or I haven't, categorized my purchases in 6 months. And now I'm like, oh, what was this for? Where did I go?
Yeah.
So keeping in my head, even once a week, just reviewing, just taking a look at it so it doesn't pile up. Because for 2 years on tax season, my wife's yelling at me, do you have everything figured out? Do you have it all categorized? I'm like, no. So I'm going through
Yeah.
9 months of driving, trying to figure out
Well,
what was business, what was not business,
and
what was
and
this purchase.
for $70 a year,
Hmm.
go ahead and download Mile IQ and just look at it once a week, every day, at the end of the day, whatever. Like, that's part of what you're talking about, right, Alfred? Carve out the time, swipe that thing left and right, and then you're done. And now you're not going to worry about that audit with your miles or whatever. Like, no, you have a ledger.
Yeah, you can be a letter. And if you do it, like I said, and on your transactions, if you're doing it once a month, that way it's taken care of and you don't have
Mhm.
9 months to go through and you're not stressed out come tax time because you have a whole year's worth of stuff that you're trying to, figure out and you've forgotten. You've lived life.
Yeah. Something simple like Mile IQ can be a lifesaver. Um, okay, Alfred. So this is the main thing that everyone was really reaching out. I'm going to read some of the just kind of a few here. We've got about 10 or so minutes, so we'll let you kind of choose which ones you'd like to debunk, which ones you want to talk about, and maybe which ones are something people might need to call you about and talk to you a little deeper on. But so we asked our referral partners some of the things, and the most common topics, obviously, is number one is about write-offs. Everything boils down to write-offs, and in the mortgage world, again, having your taxes correctly done, especially if you're self-employed, can make a huge difference on how much you can get qualified or if you can even get qualified at all. And the one thing that I hate hearing sometimes is like, oh, I've got a tax guy, don't worry, they're a wizard. And I was like, oh no, you're not going to have any income, you're not going to qualify. So so they brought up things like cars, employing kids or families. My personal favorite question was, hey, I've seen on Instagram that a lot of people are writing off vacations or parties under their business. What about like when to make a big purchase, like buying a new car or something like that? Maybe if your business is doing well. Vehicles for mortgage, the way that underwriters look at income is really important. Me and you have talked about that before, whether you're using that box 9 for vehicle expenses or down on the other page for actual counting of the miles. Huge difference whether or not that's going to be added back into your income to help you qualify for more money. So those are some of the main things. Can you just kind of dive into write-offs? And I'd also like to ask, so many people get advice now on TikTok and Instagram and everything else, and we're trying to do the same, but we're trying to give good advice. So like, how often do you run into that where people are doing something they've seen online and whether it's right or wrong?
I say that all the time, and I would just definitely say beware of Instagram and TikTok to get your IRS advice or your tax advice, because at the end of the day, you have to kind of think about it this way. If you were up against any type of legal implications, or you have to go to court. If you go before that judge, you can't bring up a TikTok post and say, well, this blogger, this influencer said that I could do this. So as a result, I went and, robbed this store or something crazy, right? You can't go back and put it on an Instagram person or some type of influencer or a TikTok post. It's almost the same way with tax, right? So they may say that you can do this XYZ, but until you have actually confirm that with either your tax professional or you've done the research. It has to be an IRS code that says that you can do this particular thing, and there's a code associated with that. Then it's going to be disallowed by the IRS, because the IRS is all they're going to do is go back and there's going to go back and say, well, what does the code say? Just like in law, well, what does law say? What did the courts say about that, right? So I would just say kind of beware of just, getting all of your information on TikTok. Now, stuff as far as like vacations, yeah, that was on TikTok for a while too. One of my clients asked me about that, and I was like, "No, that's a bunch of baloney. Like, you can't just go right off a vacation and say, it was all for business." Just like they just came out with all this resources they're going to put about auditing these lifestyle influencers. So basically, you have these, social media influencers that are saying, "Well, everything is a write-off because all I do is sit on Instagram and all I do is talk about my life, and I have these people paying me for ads. So now everything that I do is a write-off." Well, the IRS is cracking down on that because they are feeling like, they're being abusive, with it. And so they're putting, so much thousands of dollars into auditing these social media influencers. So that's one of the newest things that just came out maybe a month ago. So just, it all boils down at the end of the day, as far as write-offs are concerned, because I could talk about this, for an hour, is you have to think of two words that the IRS throws out all the time. And I go to IRS conferences at least once or twice a year, and it's the same thing. As it relates to business write-offs, is the write-off ordinary and is it necessary? It has to fall into those two things. It has to be ordinary and necessary. So much of that is up for somewhat of an interpretation, but I'll give an example and say this. If you have a business that where you're, trying to capture and get high-end clients, let's say that you're in downtown Manhattan and you're trying to be maybe a realtor to these homeowners that are looking to purchase million-dollar homes in Manhattan. And a part of, you going out and speaking with these potential clients that are going to buy, you're going to be the person to transact, to make the transaction to buy that home or that high-rise condo, $1 million+ you go buy a briefcase or some type of bag to put your documents in and your laptop and all that kind of stuff. Well, is it ordinary for your bag to be a Gucci bag? The Gucci bag might be $2,500, right? If your clients are high end, they have court cases and have shown, that that was acceptable because your clientele are all having name brand stuff. So that would be more acceptable. That would be more ordinary. Now, is it necessary? Maybe not so much. You could just go get a more traditional bag, but people have fought that, make that point in that case that my clients are high-end celebrities. And so, I'm coming in with my Target stuff, and you can do that, and that's fine. But then if you decide to go get something name brand because everybody else around you, your clients are name brand, then the auditors would say, okay, we'll allow that in that case. But if that's not your client base, and your client base is more of your average American, they're not a celebrity, they're not rich, then it's just like, okay, well, did you really need to go get that, buy a Louis Vuitton suit and then call that a write-off? But your clients are, they work at, a regular place, and they make an average salary, 50, 60, $70,000 a year. They're not these millionaires. That's where we kind of get into the necessary and ordinary situations. And, so some of that stuff is a little subjective, but those are the first two things that you need to decide and say, okay, is this expense? This what I'm trying to write off? Is this ordinary? If it's necessary? Travel is another example. People that are in real estate, well, real estate is everywhere, right? So it's a lot easier for realtors and real estate professionals to write off travel expenses because they can say, like, no, I was going out and looking at these properties in this other state to try to see if it's something that I can invest in, any property that I can get. It's ordinary. That's necessary, right? Because your business is in real estate. Now, if you are, in landscaping and you do residential homes, in landscaping, that's going to be a little bit harder to pass through to say, I'm going to write off, $5,000 on this trip to Miami and I live in Phoenix, because you're just quote unquote saying, well, I'm going to look at grass. Yeah, I mean, yeah, grass is everywhere, but that's going to be a little bit more far-fetched than an actual real estate professional where their job is to go out and survey land or meeting with other realtors. They're meeting with potential clients to say, okay, we're looking at actually buying this commercial property in this other state. So now that substantiates that expense. Again, ordinary and necessary. So those are the things that you have to kind of get with your tax professional with, just kind of use some common sense, which is like I say, not so common, but instead of making these far stretches as far as, well, can I write off, all of my mortgage on my home? No, there's more than likely you can. It has to be reason. It has to be justifiable for actual business purpose, and you not just use making up stuff for business. It's not like that. So we always err on the more cautious side when we advise our clients because we don't want you to get audited. We have like less than 1% audit history with our clients in our company. Out of 14 years of doing business, I think I've only had two clients that have been audited in 14 years. And even when they were audited, we were able to help them get through that process. So, we don't get into that, crazy stuff, but if it makes sense, just like the Augusta rule, that's another one. Everybody wants to try,
Yeah.
Augusta rule is big on TikTok, right? I want to do the Augusta rule. I want to do the Augusta rule. Well, are you even in real estate? Like, do you even have a home large enough to host, a conference where people can come in and stay with you for you to be able to use the Augusta rule? Like, but they just see it and they just want to do it just so they can save money on taxes. But sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. So
Greg?
Yeah, that's the big thing is the social media. My favorite is the entrepreneur who says like I did 10 videos on my private jet, so I wrote off the jet. We won't name any names, Grant Cardone, but doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. You just listen to people and there is a tax professional that I do enjoy her videos because she does debunk videos. And I think the term you used was a public agent. Is that the term you used?
Enrolled.
She said, uh, or an
Enrolled in.
enrolled agent,
Yeah.
sorry. She's an enrolled agent and a tax lawyer and tax professional. So she references tax code and court cases and precedents and everything like that to kind of debunk or clarify these videos. And I love those
Yeah.
because
I know you're talking
it
about.
is,
I know. I think I know you're talking about. I've seen her video. She
yeah.
is.
And it is very case by case because maybe the court case defends your situation, or maybe it's a totally different industry, and you've got to go in and argue it. So it's
Yeah,
very
but how many people do we know and that we work with are prepared to go in and argue something in court right now?
no one in our sphere, no one what at
A
all.
few of the lawyers, maybe, and that's it.
Yeah,
You spend the money on the lawyers to go and represent you, and you spending some thousands of dollars for them to go, to court for
Yeah,
you.
you
So
could have just figured that out on the actual taxes being prepared. So I know you got a hard out, Alfred. So um, can you tell people how to get a hold of you if they'd be interested in maybe having a discovery call or kind of what you offer and everything? And then if we have a minute left, I would love you just to wrap up talking about vehicles on taxes because that was a huge question from everybody and me too. Is like, how do you choose from that box nine to those miles? Because that affects people with mortgage.
yeah, so on the vehicles, you're typically going to have the actual deduction that you're going to take, which is where you're saying, and let me back up and say, you can have a vehicle that's used exclusively for business, but most people don't have that. Most average person has their personal vehicle that they start using for business purposes, but it's not all business, right? So generally, with the if you have a business, a vehicle that's under the business name, then that's going to be the one that's going to be 100% business use, right? But for most cases, it's going to be just your personal vehicle. So then you get to take one or two deductions, one of two. One's going to be the standard mileage deduction. And so you mentioned Mile IQ, and that's where you're going to be actually using the mileage for business purposes. You got to actually keep a mileage log. That's what the IRS expects. And then you kind of put in that log as well, what you were doing during that time for business, because we have to differentiate between the personal and the business. So that's the one side, and you will get the rate, whether it's 65 cents a mile, 57 cents a mile, whatever it is for that particular year or half a year, because sometimes they split it down the middle. The other side is the actual expense. So then that's when you're looking at gas, you're looking at, oil changes, you're looking at tolls, potentially tires, repairs, and all those things. So you may have $6,000 worth of actual expenses on your vehicle for that year. This is not including depreciation. And then you have to say, okay, of that, well, what am I actually, what percentage of business use am I having on that vehicle? Is it at least 50%? Is it 80%? If it's less than 50%, then generally you're not going to get much of a deduction there at all. But if it's 50% or more, you're going to get a lot more of the deduction on the actual side. So you have to choose between one or the two. Now, what the lenders can add back will be the depreciation expense. So that's the expense. You don't get to write off like your car note payments, like if you're financing a car. That payment you don't get to write off, but you depreciate it over generally 5 years. Sometimes it's bonus depreciation as well. So that takes and reduces your tax liability, which brings your tax bill down. But if you're trying to apply for a mortgage, you want your taxable your income to kind of go up so you can qualify for more house. So that's one of the things that they can add back, including the other portion, which is there's two ways to prepare it on the tax return, and it's better for you to see it and have it like here on the Zoom. But you can go back and add back that one line you had mentioned. It was the exact line. I think it's 12A.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, on the tax return, and that's the one that's related to how you deduct for your actual expenses for the vehicle versus your mileage. So I generally tell most people to do the mileage. So then that way you have your log and you can say that I went this many miles and I did these certain things for business purposes instead of trying to say, well, gas, gas is hard to split up between personal and business because you just fill your tank up. You don't have two different tanks, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's why I generally would say go the mileage route and have those business miles. And that should be something that they can go back and add back in to
Yeah.
your income.
And obviously, there's a lot more complicated strategies that you can bring up based on people's situations. So, if they have some things that they want to talk to you about specifically, I highly recommend Alfred. I use Alfred personally, and does a great job. And there's no one size fits all solution. These are just basics that we're covering. But how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So we are on Facebook and Instagram, social media under Life Tax Financial Services. Our website is lifetaxfinancial.com. Again, that's lifetaxfinancial.com. You call our office. We do have a local office just 6 minutes north of downtown Dallas. And if you call the number, just tell them you want to schedule a discovery meeting. The discovery meeting is free, and that's where we just kind of get to know one another and go over all of our services, which includes bookkeeping, fractional CFO services, tax planning, advanced tax strategy, and then of course tax preparation as well. That number is 214-267-9810. Again, that's 214-267-9810. You can also text that number, and I can send you the link directly to schedule that discovery meeting. And yeah, and that's pretty much it. And then email is just taxpro, TAXPRO at lifetaxfinancial.com. So that's
And then,
email.
of course, you can help people with LLC formations and those kinds of things.
Yes, 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 and that's what we cover. Yes, LLC formation, corporate formations, nonprofit formation is another thing that we can form in the state of Texas. So to make sure I clarify that as well. In the state of Texas, we help with sales taxes. Yeah, so it's several things that we do under financial services and accounting that we handle in-house, and we also have some strategic partners to help with business legal affairs as well as financial advisors.
So yeah, awesome, Alfred. I know you got to
Awesome.
go. We thank you so much for your time, and maybe if we can catch you again with some more time, we can go into a little 201 here instead of just the basics.
Yeah, yeah, we can look at one niche like kind of thing that's kind of targeting in a little bit more and maybe do a
Yeah,
webinar
people
or
have
something.
so many questions. It's hard to.
Yeah.
This is how every meeting goes. Whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
calm back down to earth here. Let's follow one thing at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all for sure. So the best thing is just to go ahead and schedule that discovery meeting, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of every person's situation that wants to come on board with us. So,
Yeah.
but thanks,
Awesome,
Mark.
Alfred. Thank you so much, and we'll
We
have all the
appreciate it.
information in the notes and YouTube and everything. And we appreciate your time.
Take care. Thanks, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Got 5 minutes. You want to fill it?
I lost my my headphones.
They
They're at
die
the
on
end.
you. I could
Can you hear
hear.
me?
I could hear when it turned off. Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, my phone's freaking out. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts there? Go ahead.
I mean, it's great. It's good info. Like, I mean, obviously, we're going to post this on social media, so it's kind of like, well, don't believe everything you see on social media, but believe us type thing. But understand what his credentials are. You can look up the contact that he gave, you know, the website, social media, just like any of us. You can trust us as far as you can throw the phone after you watched our video until you talk to us and can earn that trust. So it's definitely something that needs to be explored by a lot of people that we work with in our sphere, self-employed and 1099 people, to figure out how to do everything. So it was great info, obviously very, very high level. Didn't get
Yeah, I
super
mean,
specific, but
the questions that I got were so specific. We can't cover all of that. I mean, there's people who own properties that are going to depreciate things a lot differently than if you don't own properties or if you only own your primary residence.
mhm.
And I can't harp enough on
doing your taxes and how you do your taxes, especially if you're self-employed in any way, is going to not only affect how much money you have to pay the IRS and your monthly budget and everything, but you may or may not qualify for a home based on how you do your taxes. And
Yeah.
so, or as a broker, obviously we can do things different ways. We don't always have to have perfect tax returns, but it's going to affect what kind of rate you get, how much down payment you might have to put down. So if you want the best terms, the lowest down payments, all that kind of stuff, how you do your taxes plays a huge role. And if you're not considering that and you don't know, like he's talking about, and like I mentioned, what can be added back in, what kind of credits that you can get, even though you're writing it off, right? You're going to be able to help your tax liability by writing them off, but then turn around on the mortgage, use those same write-offs back in. So it's double whammy. You get the write-off and you get the credit for the income on the mortgage. There's a few lines on the tax returns that fit that mold, and you really need to know which ones. And so if you're in a situation with taxes coming up, you've been looking for a house, maybe someone's told you no in the past, you gotta the strategy, long term. Everything in the real estate world is thinking a little bit farther down the line. So we can help. Alfred can absolutely help. He's helped me. I've gone through purchasing a home and turning something into a rental and different buying rental out of state. He's been with me every step of the way of some of my more recent developments.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to have somebody you trust and somebody you can refer as well, especially with everybody that we work with. A little off topic, I do want to bring up the fact that it appears you have a goatee again.
It's supposed to be my November beard, but part up here just makes it look like a goatee. So
The angle, it looks like you just purposely just
nope, this is only thing I shaved is the neck beard. So this is
I
my no
couldn't
shave November.
gotcha. I couldn't ignore it. It had to be brought to the
Well,
forefront.
yeah, it's unfortunate. The lighting is making me look like Fernando Vina, but yeah, he's a good player.
All right. Well, I mean, another good call, back to back good conversations. So hopefully we're on to something. Hopefully
Yeah,
people
you think we
listen.
find if we let other people talk, it's more better
It's way
information?
it's way better. But yeah, we're in the final minute, so we'll wrap it up.
All right,
And
sounds
we'll
good.
get this up. And if anybody has questions, obviously reach out to Alfred.
Yep, he'll take care of you.
All right. Well, see you later.
Yep.